let's move on to some hot topics. Cindy, I'll start with you. What have you read or heard about just in the last few days that has piqued your interest?
Yeah, there was one thing that really piqued my interest I have to share, and I heard it twice, which was interesting, and that was that companies that have sustainability initiatives internally, specifically related to travel and, of course, other initiatives, their travel is lower from a percentage and a spend perspective compared to normal to other companies that don't have the same sustainability initiatives.
Wow, that's very interesting. That's something I need to think about for a while. Why do you think that is, first of all, Cindy?
I was really working towards what does it mean and why. The one thing I came up with, and again, it's my opinion, it's theoretical, and that is companies that have tighter controls, have more program mandates, and more of a focus on their travel program may not be spending at the same level as companies that may not have those same levels of controls, Neil.
Chris, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I remember it's funny, I was thinking about this. I remember giving a presentation probably about 9-10 years ago on where we need to get to in travel. And I distinctly remember as part of this presentation, I must try and find it. It was a picture of Homer Simpson in his power station, right? And he's sitting there with hundreds and hundreds of buttons. And I remember kind of describing this as, travel has to be more than just an on-off button, right? And we need to give travel managers, we need to give purchasers of travel more to play with than simply on-off. And I think this is where very much the sustainability argument is now. There are companies out there who, through lack of perhaps knowledge or lack of being able to baseline their program, the only thing they have to really drive a more sustainable program is just to stop travel. And actually, I just think we've got to get better at this traveling smarter and this optimizing piece. And I'm certainly, seeing a lot of companies who are starting to say, well, okay, how can we travel better? And of course, it depends where you are, right? So in Europe, we're blessed often, I mentioned about some new train services we've got in London, we're blessed with alternatives in the UK. We're a much smaller
the train,
in North America. So we've got things like trains and things to go for. So it's about saying, okay, do we need to travel? Can we travel on a brand new Dreamliner instead of a 15-year-old A380? That kind of stuff. Can we kind of mix it up? Can we do one longer trip instead of 3 shorter trips? Those kind of things. So I think this is where the excitement around sustainability, I think, will come. Suppliers have to embrace it, of course, right?
I think they'll have to now. What it sounds like is, this may be the beginnings of a wake-up call, if this is true, that the industry has to find a way to travel smarter from a sustainable, more responsibility from an environmental point of view, to survive. Maybe this is the beginnings of a wake-up call. Very interesting point, Cindy. Chris, hot takes from the news. What are you seeing?
Well, it is very much the travel. It is very much the travel disruption, and I kind of mentioned it earlier on that it's continuing not to go away, and it is very frustrating. And I'll give you a business travel story. I was away in the Netherlands around a month or so ago, and I actually got the train out. So we have a Eurostar train that runs from London to Amsterdam, and again, massive delays of security on the way through. Coming back, interestingly, I was staying at an airport hotel, so I didn't get to my hotel till say 11 p.m. I was taking a flight out at 7 a.m. the next morning, and the airline and the airport were kind of texting me saying, you should check in 4 hours before. And I'm thinking, well, 7 a.m. flight, I've got hand luggage only, I've already got my boarding pass, and literally I'm staying at an airport hotel so I can see the check-in desk. And I'm thinking, I'm not, literally I would have 3 hours sleep. I'm not going to do that. And so I turned up kind of 2.5 hours before, and the queue was snaking out the door, and I just about made my flight. And it just kind of got me thinking about, it can be, not always, but it can be a really unpleasant experience traveling right now, and many reasons for that, right? Many reasons. Post-COVID, we've got a little bit of Brexit sprinkled in there in the UK. I actually now have a wonderful London stamp in my passport, by the way, which is amazing. And that's another story from a French immigration agent in London Station. So all of that adds to the kind of confusion and everything else. So travel is a little bit different, and I always smile when people say I'm just longing to get back to traveling again. I do sometimes question whether people want to travel as travel was 3 years ago, because travel as it is right now is a little bit more difficult. We've got to think about it. The days of just saying, you know what, I'm going to go to Dubai tomorrow night, which is the world I used to live in, and just literally being able to grab a suitcase and go, that's kind of gone now. We need to think about stuff a little bit more carefully. And from a sustainability perspective, one would argue that we should be thinking about it.
So if we marry the last two things we've spoken about, it does sound like the industry is facing some challenges, and it needs to deliver service, and it needs to deliver service, quality service, in an environmentally responsible manner. Thanks, Chris. You know, we're seeing this over here. We know it's a global issue, but it's great to hear that from somebody with feet on the ground in sunny England, as we say. By the way, Chris, I hadn't mentioned this before, but interesting office setup you have here. Tell us about that. That's not your normal office setup.
No, it's not. I have a beautiful office out the other side of the house, but we've actually opened our house up to a Ukrainian family who's joining us in the next few days. So I've decamped to our sunroom at the back of the house, which at the moment is beautiful. I'm not looking forward to the winter so much, but so if you see me with a hat and gloves and a big coat on conference calls, that's why. But
well, that's a marvelous gesture. Thank you very much, and I'm sure some folks are going to be very, very grateful for that. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. So just to wrap up, I'll just talk about my topic du jour, if you will, and that is finally we have a little bit more clarity on the Spirit Airlines situation and what has Spirit Airlines got to do with corporate travel. But as we might have suspected, the shareholders rejected the Frontier takeover, and so so in principle, the JetBlue takeover or merger, if you like, has been agreed to. If JetBlue is a big part of your program, don't worry. We think this is all about them getting planes and pilots. They've already said it's to fuel organic growth. So that's not typically the characteristics of a merger. So I think they're going to use a lot of resources. Just my take, by the way, on this. We'll see then. This is going to be subject to some regulatory approval, which is likely to happen sometime in the early half of 2024. So we've got a ways to go before we're actually going to see anything material on that. And there's already some antitrust issues that JetBlue is working through with American Airlines, of course, on their Northeast partnership. So they've got a lot of work to do. And they're on the hook as well if the transaction doesn't go through or doesn't get approval, and the transaction is worth about 3.8 billion. JetBlue have, as part of the offer, about almost $500 million at stake that they would have to pay Spirit if this doesn't go through. So I'm guessing with $500 million, they must be pretty confident of finally getting it across the line. But all that for the future. But at the moment, it seems like the JetBlue Spirit is going ahead. So with that, I'd like to thank Cindy. Thank you very much, Chris. Hope you come back and join us in a future edition of Reflections. We'll wish everybody a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.